There we go. Thank you, Monica. All right. Good morning, everybody. So we have a couple people with us in here this morning in the Zoom, but I know we've got people watching on LinkedIn and Facebook. So for anybody that is watching from any of the locations, please feel free to drop any of your questions, comments in chat or in the comments on social, and we will make sure to get to our speaker this morning. And speaking of that, our speaker this morning is Kaufman. She's actually the founder and CEO at Space of Mind. So we're going to be talking a little bit this morning about the virtual school year coming up. I know that that's probably a pain point, a stress point for many of us parents, including myself. So very excited to hear about some of these, some advice and some tips this morning. To give everybody a little brief overview of what our organization is about and who we are. My name is Nikki Caboose. I'm the VP of Development for, Palm Beach Tech, now South Florida Tech. We actually just are going through a new rebranding and expansion with our recent 5-year anniversary. And then I've got actually Monica Rojas. She's our new full-time member and inclusion specialist. So you'll probably see her a lot more as well. And to give you guys a brief overview, basically we are a tech nonprofit, started, like I said, about 5 years ago in Palm Beach County, built out to be a countywide organization, lots of great members, partners, a lot of tech talent, and recently expanded. So now we've got members from Martin County to Miami. We work a lot with the different school districts, our higher education, coding schools, a lot of the headquartered companies here, and really just bringing everybody together to connect the dots, and with our whole mission and vision being to build South Florida into a tech hub. So with that said, I'd like to introduce Allie, our speaker. And Allie, if you'd like to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your organization and what you do, and then please feel free to go straight into the presentation as you like.
Sounds good. Thanks, you, Nikki. So it's great to be here. I'm really excited to be involved with South Florida Tech this year, and to be with you all today. We're on the eve of Palm Beach County starting school on Monday, and I know a lot of parents are either already started school or getting ready for it, and everybody is really just wondering what this is all going to look like. So hopefully today I can shed some light and help create some strategies and reduce some stress. We'll see. But I did found Space of Mind in 2004. I'll give you a little bit about the history. We are an educational services and technology company, and we specialize in curriculum and programs that support social homeschooling, coaching, and enrichment. So excited to be with you, and let me just share my slides so you can follow along. So we're going to talk this year about what virtual school looks like, what is virtual, what's distance learning, what's homeschooling, what does all of this mean. Basically, you're all probably here because you either feel like Sue, you know Sue, you are Sue, you might be Sue, but obviously nobody wants to end up like Sue. I do want to clarify, and I'll talk a lot about the difference, that distance learning, virtual learning, and homeschooling are not necessarily one and the same. So homeschooling may have gotten a bit of a bad rap because in the spring, everyone went to distance learning, and because their kids were home, they thought that that is then homeschooling. Homeschooling is actually a very different situation, but nonetheless, everybody is feeling a little bit stressed out and a little bit overwhelmed and a little bit unsure of what this year is going to look like. So so we can all set the tone, distance learning is what students are starting off in Palm Beach County and around the country doing. They're logging in and being taught from a distance by their regular teachers. Virtual learning is typically you're logging in and being taught by pre-recorded videos, and it's typically self-paced. And then homeschooling can be whatever you want it to be. And it's very freeing and liberating and flexible, and may be the answer for many families this year. So my goal today is to really talk about what is Space of Mind and why are we a modern schoolhouse? What does that mean? how did we deconstruct the education process to get here. We'll talk a little bit about what distance learning and homeschooling not being mutually inclusive. And then what's this year going to look like? We'll talk a little bit about some success tips to make it easier, and in case you need some support, what we can do. So Space of Mind started probably when I was a little kid playing school with my neighborhood friends and didn't even realize it. But technically it started in the fall of 2004 when I moved back to South Florida from Boston. And I came down to start a coaching company that was working with people who were dealing with clutter and the ramifications of it. So inattention, disorganization, anxiety for the most part. And over the first 6 years, I was working with numerous clients in different scenarios. I was working with hoarders who couldn't find their couches. I was working with CEOs who had busy creative brains, but were not really effective communicating with their linear thinking type A executive assistants. And then those CEOs would ask me to go work with their families. And I was traveling all over the country, working in homes with families and seeing how the family systems were getting cluttered. And realizing two really important things. Number one, that families really needed to operate a little bit more like companies. And my experience in the business world, in youth programming and in professional development and corporate communications really gave me an interesting take on the family system. And number two, school-related stress was easily the top reason that families were calling. So over those initial 6 years, I started to go visit schools. I was working with therapists as a liaison, helping them understand what was going on in the family system, working with tutors, working with ESE coordinators, going in for IEP meetings, and working in the home, trying to help to create systems that worked for the learning style of everyone in the family. And if you're a parent who processes verbally and you tell your child to go empty the dishwasher, but they do not process verbally or auditorily, then they will not hear you. And it's not that they're disobeying you, it's just that they're not hearing you. And so it was very clear that the communication systems, the organization systems, and the external systems like that were coming from school or the workplace stress were all colliding, and parents are moving fast, and adults tend to think sometimes that that kids are just mini versions of them, and maybe sometimes miss the fact that they process information differently, or think about organizing differently, or manage stress differently. And so we were able to change some of the systems at home, but the systems that we couldn't change were the ones at school. So I was working with amazing kids who didn't want to go to school. And at the time in 2008, 2009, 2010, the issues were really bullying, test anxiety, and Edline, the online grade reporting site. The issues over the recent years have expanded. We have social media pressure. We have an increased understanding of more mature information than our younger kids are aware of because of the internet. We have school shootings, and now we have COVID. So the school-related stressors have gotten much deeper. And as the stressors have increased, students' working memories have decreased because we have too much on our mind. So think about all of us as adults over the last 10 years with the increase of technology, our attention spans have gotten more convoluted and shorter. And so the same thing is happening for kids. So in 2010, I had learned enough about how homeschooling worked, trying to solve some problems for my private coaching kids. I had toured private schools all over South Florida and was really not sure that there was a better solution than the one I had sort of imagined in my head, which was to take all of my youth programming and experience and non-traditional experience and start a homeschool program. So that's what I did with 3 students in my living room. And those are the 3 girls in the top left. And so in November of that first year, we got student number 4. That's Emily. She's the picture in the middle. And she is now, you can see her on the right as one of our staff members. So she joined our coaching team this January, and that's been pretty amazing seeing her come full circle, especially as one of our most brilliant educators. So the program has grown quite a lot over the years. We've now go kindergarten through 12th, and we have a gap year program for post high school students and programs for adults and families. We've expanded to add another building to our Delray campus. So we have the Hub, which is a community center for students and families. And we have just launched, or will launch on Monday, a Boca campus with a new concept that's going to support distance learners. So we are making big waves on a national level right now as well. Our curriculum, which is written in-house, and we've developed a curriculum system for project-based learning that puts students at the center of it and really creates a choose your own adventure model for learning that integrates all the subjects and teaches 21st century social, emotional, and life skills. We have expanded that nationally, both virtually and to be licensed for other homeschool families. And we are now officially an educational technology company and have our first software release coming out hopefully this weekend. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. So it's been an exciting 16 years, and the last 10 years of really charting the course of social homeschooling and seeing what's possible when we release some of the constraints of the traditional system and put the learning in the students' hands and the creative autonomy balanced with the students and their educators. It's been an amazing opportunity to see the growth. So the reason that Space of Mind is doing what we're doing is really one thing, and it's to reduce school-related stress. And if you look at our logo, it's a burst of exclamation points, and they all come together at a singular point of focus. And the way to combat stress is through creativity and through intentional, mindful, passion-based work. And so when we look at how our school system is designed right now, we've taken most of that out. Pretty much what exists now in the school system is what was there when it was developed in the 50s. And when we created the school system that we have now, we were looking to train soldiers, factory workers, and farmers. Somewhere in the 70s, the farming education came out of the majority of the country's school systems, but the rest of it stayed. And we now have a 21st century need for a workforce that speaks creativity. And as a CEO, I would certainly rather hire the person who can come in and articulate their creative vision and find a smart, savvy way to execute it than I would the person who sat in Harvard's library for 4 years and got the best degree and didn't have the world experience to back it up. And as we see with COVID, and all the problems that are facing our future and the kids that are coming up through school today, it's easy to argue that they are going to need their social, emotional, and life skills much more predominantly than their academic skills in terms of solving the problems that are coming up for them. And most notably, resilience is, I think, the number one tool that our students will need. And resilience comes from learning how to fail. So our school system has been created to only reward those who pass on the first try. And as an entrepreneur, I can tell you that the best lessons come from the things that haven't worked. And in software development, I used to work for Rational Software, which is where a lot of this understanding came from, is that the testing phase of the software development life cycle is the most important part. You want to test the product in every way so that the engineer can find out what they don't yet know. And then they want to apply that information. And once you feel like it's good, you release a product, but you immediately start working on the next version. So there's no expectation of perfection. And in school, teachers don't hand back a test and say, before we move on, I want to make sure you know all of this. Sit down with me and let me go over it with you. And there is no parent out there that is rewarding their child for getting an F. And so we are looking at it wrong. We are creating a system where kids believe that there's only one way to do it. You have to do it right. If it doesn't work, don't even try harder the next time. And that's teaching exactly the wrong sensibility for the types of problems that our kids are going to need to grow up and learn how to solve. So the way that we've chosen at Space of Mind to focus on learning is all about the inspiration. It's all about understanding creativity and problem solving through experimenting with art and engineering and cooking and music and all of the things that give us a sense of self. And once we have confidence playing, then we can start to learn. And we've taken that idea of play out of the school day over these years, mostly in the last 20 to 25 years, which is so ironic. We had a good burst in the 80s and 90s, and then it's changed a lot. So the mission at Space of Mind is to engage students in all of the potential passion-based activities that we can expose them to so they can learn what feels good. And once you learn what feels good, then you can work towards your goals in a different and renewed and intentional way. So we do this by fostering a very personalized approach. And this approach can be done in any classroom with any teacher, with any parent. It's just about looking at the at education from a bit of a different perspective. So in traditional school, the teacher is standing in front of the classroom and they are in there as the expert. They're in there prepared to disseminate information, and it's up to the student to retain it. And in the 21st century model that we are using with our students, and that I believe will help take our kids to the next level that they need to be at, it's about putting them at the center. We learn best through experimenting and experiencing the learning process. What we use our senses to remember, we will retain. But if we're only getting the information one way from a teacher lecturing at us, then or from reading it in a book, we aren't going to get the experience of that information, and therefore we are likely to not remember it for as long. So having the creative arts activates the part of our brain that makes it a memorable experience. And that's so, so important. School should be an experience, not a place. And right now we have kids learning anywhere and everywhere, and that's how it should be right now. Parents are working remotely. We're probably going to stay that way for quite a long time. Companies are realizing that it's cheaper to operate that way or more effective. And so I don't think we're going back to a regular, like, traditional school day in the mainstream after this, because the school day was modeled after the work day. But if the work day is now becoming more flexible, then there's no need for the school day to stay the same. And so my mission over these last 10 years has been to mainstream homeschooling as the way to introduce more flexibility and fun into the school experience, not just for students, but for their families, and to be able to make it cheaper. We're paying a lot of money in private school that maybe could be reduced, or outside tutoring that maybe isn't needed, because if we change the landscape a bit, then students may show up differently. So the idea is that families would engage in the school experience more, because the students wouldn't be so stressed out. And the reason I started the homeschool program was mostly because my coaching clients, the kids that I was working with, had come to hate school so much that they had associated school with learning. And there's a difference between hating school and hating learning. And we want every student to grow up to be a lifelong learner. And if they think that learning only happens in school, then they're not going to pick up a book outside of it. And if they've learned in school that reading is horrible, then they're not going to pick up a book and learn something to be better at their job later as an adult. So the end game should be to make school a stress-free experience so kids want to jump in and learn. And that's super important. So over these last 10 years, while I've been on this mission to mainstream home education, and Space of Mind is a homeschool program, we are using the homeschool format to customize curriculum to meet each student's needs. There are so many benefits to that, but I've heard a lot of excuses or reasons over the years that families hadn't looked at it before. But right now, the studies are showing over 40% of American parents are looking at homeschooling as an option, either the next option or the backup option, depending on how distance learning goes. And there are so many benefits to it. There's no state standardized testing. The curriculum can be customized to whatever schedule you want, to your student individually. Who knows how long the current college admission structure will be in place. The college business model has to change a lot right now, but there are huge benefits for homeschoolers when they apply to college, because their transcripts are not looked at as an apples to apples comparison. They are not in the same pool of applicants for most schools with public and private and charter school applicants. So the homeschoolers get looked on a case-by-case portfolio basis. So that's a huge benefit. But mostly because parents thought that they had to do it all themselves. And that's where Space of Mind comes in. So we've taken the last 2 years working with a team of software engineers, franchise attorneys, and my team developing curriculum that can be sort of like an Apple device. You just sort of open it, and the curriculum is customizable to the student and the group and the family, and it feels good, and it just works. So over these last 2 years, our goal to launch all of this was August of 2020, and COVID came in the spring. And instead of standing on top of a really tall soapbox right now and screaming at the world of how many benefits there are with homeschooling, we have parents all over the country and educators who are calling us now. This is the most well-informed constituency of prospective parents we've ever spoken to. So it's great to see everyone's doing their research. It's also very clear that some parents are overdoing it. So we'll talk about that too. So basically the idea was that we wanted to change the way homeschooling is viewed, and really make it an opportunity to promote all of the things that are good about learning and that need to be learned, and that make students and parents and educators feel inspired. So that's what we've been doing here. And we're excited to offer throughout the country now the opportunity to make this moment a first choice moment, and not a sort of opportunity to choose the worst of the bad options. So this is a time where the education industry has an opportunity, and the education system has an opportunity to reinvent itself. We've been screaming for this for a long time. School shootings didn't clear out the schools, but COVID did. And as a former professional organizer, I can tell you that you can't reorganize your kitchen cabinets unless you empty them a little bit. And so I'm also a huge proponent of public schools. I'm a product of public school. I believe that public school is vitally important in our country, but it has some very serious challenges, that we have a moment right now while we're clearing space to change. And my optimistic side really is believing that we have so many creative, progressive educators and education tech companies and administrators and mental health providers, and we can, in these next 2 to 3 years, reinvent the American education system to be amazing and just what we need. But I do think it's going to take 2 to 3 years. And so as parents go into this moment and are looking at starting the school year with distance learning and maybe waiting to go back to schools the minute they open, I think we have to really think hard about not repeating the mistake we got into in the spring. We don't want to jerk kids around and have them start something, stop something, move them, start again, stop it again, move them again. Teachers are not happy in Palm Beach County right now. There is a lot going on in the district. There is no guarantee that teachers are going to make it through the year. There could be class changes. There could be people getting sick. There are logistics in Palm Beach County's district that are just so immense to overcome. We have 188,000 students across every wealth spectrum. It's one of the biggest districts in the country. And so I am speaking to parents and telling them to choose the best first choice option and try to commit to it for the year. And if something isn't working, don't try harder to make it work. Let's switch it up and find the thing that's going to work, because otherwise the kids are going to be caught in the crossfire of the adult's indecision or a quick reactive decision that maybe isn't in their best interest. So the reason I say this is that we rely on our working memory to go about our day, and working memory is required for learning. And so we can't do things that are going to take away a child's working memory, because that will impact their ability to manage their stress. So working memory, simply put, is the brain's ability to remember to pay attention to what it's paying attention to. And we use our working memory all the time, but you don't tell yourself, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. And you don't remind yourself, right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot. But when you're stressed out, you might hold your breath or walk into a wall. And we're adults, and this happens. How many times do you walk into a room and you're like, what am I doing in here? Right? Or you walk into your room and you're looking for something and you can't find it, and you leave and you come back 2 hours later and it's exactly where you were looking. And that's because when we're in a feverish, stressed out space, we don't see what's right in front of us because our brain is literally playing a trick on us. And it's because the stress level has gone up, and so the working memory level goes down. And this is even more the case for kids right now, because adults, we have choices we can make during the day. We can get up from our desk and go take a walk, or, take a meditation break, or go grab a cup of coffee, or go scream in your car, whatever it is you have to do, right? Kids can't do that. They have to sit in their desks. We can choose to set up the structure of our day in a way that can support our stress. If we know we're going to have a stressful phone call, we can stand up and walk around while we're having it. There's all these choices that adults can make. We also have a vocabulary to articulate our stress, and it is totally socially acceptable to walk into a group of other adults and be like, oh my God, I'm so stressed. But kids do not have a vocabulary to articulate their stress. It is not socially acceptable to walk into their peer group and say that they're so stressed. Or if they do, they're now putting pressure on their friends to try to play Oprah and de-stress their peer without any real understanding, which happens for teenagers all the time. They're sharing each other's problems. They're not sharing with adults. The kids are up all night trying to make another kid feel better, but now that kid is feeling worse because they didn't have the skills to do what they needed. Kids might say they have a headache, but that really is stress, or a stomach ache, and that really is stress. We might give them a Tylenol or an antacid, but we're not asking them what's really wrong. And it's because we just assume that they're fine if they look fine. And in fact, in the spring, the kids were more fine than the adults. But I would argue that as the fourth quarter ended, the kids were showing signs of stress. And I'm sure you're seeing it now. And when we're stressed, we cannot learn because our working memory goes away. And that is what we need to retain information. So we have to imagine, and these 5 categories, mind, body, space, time, and relationships, these are pretty much the 5 categories of thought that we have during the day. What's on your mind? How does your body feel? You know, who do you owe something to? Who do you need to connect to? How are you managing your time? What's in your space? What are the commitments that you've committed to? All of that, kids have those same 5 categories. And then they're expected to go to school and put all of that aside and be present for science or be present for math. And because science is taught in the science room and math is taught in the math room, and kids are taught because they got an F on a math test once in 3rd grade that they're bad at math, now they're sitting in science class and worrying about what's going to happen when they get to math class because they don't want to go there. So now they're not learning anything in science. And we are expecting that kids are retaining information and learning it, but they're not having the physical and emotional experiences to create a sensory memory of the information. And that's a fundamental issue in today's classrooms, and especially if you've got a 90-minute class period, the average attention span for a student these days is anywhere from 5 to 8 minutes. And so we're expecting them to put aside all this stuff, sit for longer than they can, take in information that's in a silo, because in real life, math and science and English, they all exist together, but in school, they have to exist separately. And then they're supposed to quickly in between classes find time to pee and do all this stuff, right? So it's created all of this stress that we can't expect kids to find the intention to do well in school while still figuring out how to pay attention. And most public school kids have their phones on them, right? So the teachers are also competing with that. And then the connection to their peers and themselves and their educators. So in distance learning, this is going to be even harder, which is hard to imagine, but the kids are missing their peer interactions at a level that has now created a strange Twilight Zone kind of feeling, right? The silver lining is the ones that were only using technology to communicate, I think they now really realize the power of a face-to-face reaction. But at Space of Mind, we were open for camp all summer. We're set up to have small groups throughout the school year and the summer of no more than 8 students at a time. We have a 3-to-1 ratio, and we were able to stay open all summer with no COVID cases or anything, which was amazing. But we had an incident that is worth mentioning. We had an older camper who just innocently and sweetly tussled a younger camper's hair, and the younger camper lost it because he hadn't been touched in so long. And once he had his physical reaction, he then had an emotional one, which his first thought was, did I just get COVID? And so we have to remember that we're still adults trying to figure out this new normal. And now we've got kids that may be thrust back into a school day for whether it's a week or 2 weeks or however long the schools are able to stay open, and won't really know what to do with that. So when we think about how stress impacts working memory, what it's doing is actually creating this cycle of failure. When we feel bored, frustrated, fearful, angry, sad, those are all anxiety emotions. Anxiety creates inattention. Inattention gets us disorganized. Disorganized makes us more anxious. This is the cycle of failure. And if we don't have a strong foundation under us to manage this, then we're not setting our kids up for success in the school experience. And we have to also recognize that the educators have to be set up for success. Teachers are terrified. They are stressed. Nobody has told them who's paying for sanitizer in their classrooms yet. And there are so many logistics of the technology in order to meet every student's needs. And I don't know any teacher who gets into this profession that isn't 100% committed to their students' success. But there are still stressors for the educators and for the parents. Parents need to go to work, and now they have to deal with, what do you do with your kids? So everyone is feeling all of these things, and we're a society that has become afraid to fail. And that's a big part of our learning curve, I think, right now, is remembering that the best lessons come from failure, but we have to be open to letting that happen, and then deconstructing something we've always thought of in one way and looking at it in another way. So one of the most important things we do at Space of Mind, and this is the software that we're launching right now, is an assessment tool that will allow any student anywhere to go through our virtual assessments. We used to do them all in person, obviously, and then we will help parents and educators know who they're teaching. Because when we went virtual and distance learning in the spring, we had established teacher relationships, but we're coming back in the fall with, for the most part, new student teacher relationships. So our goal with this software called SOM Roadmap is that the students will go through the assessments, where we'll get an age level and grade level on all of their subset academic skills. We look at cognitive processing, cognitive speed, personality style, leadership style, all of the inventory on the 23 social, emotional, and life skills that we look at and incorporate into our curriculum and programs. The parent dynamics and the home dynamics, all of these pieces we build into a roadmap, which is basically an individualized learning plan for every student. So this can be for any student in any school, not just within our programming. And then this roadmap is a document that helps set goals and expectations, and is an organic document to update throughout the school year. So it can be a great tool to share with the teacher, because as an educator, if we know who our students are and how they think and where they come from, then we can really understand how to teach. So as you're thinking about what this distance learning opportunity and challenges are, just some tips. The first thing is, let your student be your guide. I'm watching on Facebook groups all of the very type A moms who have decided to start homeschooling and have now been posting their living rooms turned classrooms. And what I find the most disheartening about this is that they are just recreating the environment that we already knew wasn't working. And so everybody's trying to buy the posters that you're used to seeing on the wall, and the right workbooks and the right desk and the right everything. And the reality is that the adults don't know, the kids do. And we're taking away the choices and the developmental learning for the kids to think about what environment is going to work best for you, and making that part of their experience. Because isn't that what we need to do when we go get a job and we create our office? We need to understand what works for us. Our boss isn't going to be a great boss if they say, here's your desk, here's how you're going to place things, here's the notebook you're going to use, here's this. We want kids to learn how to create tools around them with what's available. And Martha Stewart is amazing. I think she's awesome. But when she came onto the scene, she robbed little kids everywhere of the developmental stages of learning how to organize, because parents over-labeled everything. And so making basic choices about how to organize your space and your stuff is the earliest learning that we have. And who cares if the red trucks are with the red dolls, or with other categories of toys in the bin. You know, we've gone overboard in the organizing vein, and we need to look at what type of an organizer is your child, and are they visual? Does that poster on the wall even speak to them? And these are things that the parents can learn from their children throughout the year, but making those decisions right up front may set the tone that now the parent is in charge and takes the autonomy away from the student to have an opportunity to be a equal participant in their learning. And when you get into a power struggle in learning, that's when kids will shut off. So making them your partner or letting them guide is going to be an amazing way to set the tone and the space. Also, connect authentically and effectively with the teacher. Teachers are stressed. They're worried that parents are going to be overly critical. Parents are going to be watching the Zooms, I'm sure. This is new for a teacher to be observed by a parent. There's a lot of privacy issues that are going to come up. There are a lot of things that the teachers are going to learn as they go right now. And I think setting a great relationship up front, that you're going to be a partner, that you're going to figure it out together with your teacher, and not being a source of the teacher's stress. Wait and see. Don't ask questions. I think you'll get all your questions answered as the teachers know them too. But nobody knows what this year is going to look like. So the more we can get off with just setting a tone of being partners is gonna help. This is the no-brainer. Right now, decide what's more important, grades or happiness and health. A student who was a straight A student last year might be a D student this year because they're stressed, their life is upside down, they don't know what's what, and maybe the way the learning is set up for them isn't going to work. Grades are not a predictor of anything. They are only an indicator of where a student is at one moment. And if a straight A student starts getting lower grades, that student's going to have a more emotional reaction than anything. And we want to make sure that we're supporting students' mental health right now, and their physical health. Obviously, we're in this mess because of COVID. So we want to make sure that everybody's immune systems stay high, and are able to function in a way that is leading with happiness and not stress. Grades are going to be the least important indicator of anything at this point moving forward. The other thing that's, like I mentioned, a student who did well previously may now not do well. We need to stay present, not worry about what it looked like before, and not worry about what it's going to look like. We're designing this as a society right now together. If we do it collectively, it'll come out way better than if we divide and try to conquer. But we can't worry about 6 months from now. We don't know 6 days from now. And we definitely should not be comparing things to what it looked like for when we were in school. That's gone, thank God. And to what 7 months ago looked like in school. Staying flexible is going to be key. Look, there's attendance policies in place right now for distance learners. I don't know what that's going to look like, but there is no reason, like that picture of the boy crying in front of his kindergarten virtual classroom this week that went viral on the internet. Like, that is not useful. Like, that child is not learning. No child is learning if they're stressed. Their working memory prevents it. You cannot get the information to the executive functioning part of your brain. The frontal lobe will not receive the message. So there is no point in forcing a student to do something that is not working. Be flexible, figure another way out. And if it's not working in the distance learning, cut it off and find another solution. The worst thing that will happen is that you'll explore new options, but you don't want the worst thing to be that your child suffers unnecessary mental or physical anguish, or feeling like they are less than as a student, or their potential is damaged as a student, because without confidence and self-esteem, working memory doesn't work either. Finding fun anywhere you can, do dance parties during the day, make fun lunches, have a good time, do silly dress up days, whatever you can do, make recess opportunities fun, however you can find ways to make this fun. Don't worry about the stuff that ultimately doesn't matter. Homework, who knows what that's going to look like this year. There's probably still going to be a lot of it. They have to get the kids ready for another set of standardized tests. Those haven't come off anyone's radar yet. So, just don't try to overdo the pressure. Really read between the lines as much as you can. And then just remember that, we're all in this together, and at some point it's going to figure itself out and it's going to get better. But I don't think this year is going to look like anything we've ever seen. I don't really think that we're ready to bring kids into larger school environments right now, just based on what I've seen that it took in our small environment with 8 students in a group and 2 adults over the summer, how hard it was to manage all of the risk factors for COVID spread. So, and if somebody gets sick, there's going to be adjustments and kids will need to go home, and, we're going to be bouncing around for a minute. So I think if we just stay in the moment and try to be as optimistic as possible, and also realize that school isn't our only problem right now. We've got a lot going on in the world. We're in hurricane season. There's this wild election. Our country's struggling to find its own identity right now. So we have to just take things with a grain of salt and put wellness at the heart of everything. So just to kind of conclude what I wanted to share, and then I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any. Space of Mind has a whole community set of programs. We have our homeschool programs where we provide either curriculum for homeschoolers or a virtual homeschool or full or part-time programming. We do private and group coaching in academic and creative areas. We also provide a parent educator resource cafe in Delray and Boca, and have our community classroom kitchen. So we've got a really cool meal box project where your kids can cook their own lunches with meals made by our chef, and awesome camps and events as well. And like I said, we've got all of the virtual programming for Schoolhouse in Your House or homeschool programming. And we are launching on Monday our newest concept, SOM Space, which is in Boca, just at Glades and the Turnpike, a little tucked off back behind Boca Rio Road. And so this is going to be a co-learning space for distance learners. If you need to get your kids out of your house and you want to have some really experienced, qualified support through our coaches, we're also including that SOM Roadmap software. So all of our students at the SOM Space location will also get the full assessments to share with their teachers. And we're offering our Space of Mind curriculum there as well. And so this is how you can find us. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Looks like, oh wait, maybe there is something. Oh no.
Thank you so much, Allie. I was going to say, I think you actually did a wonderful job, and all of these slides were like, you had so much great information there. I don't have, I'm looking in the comments, I don't have any questions. I've got a couple of comments from people just saying that they really appreciated, like in the beginning, there was a comment about the difference between homeschooling and virtual learning. I think a lot of people don't really know the true difference between the two. And then we had Melissa make a comment just thanking you for explaining how everybody processes things differently. So I think there was just a few comments on there. It looks like you did a really good job with the presentation. And I did want to say, if there's any information, Allie, that you want to make sure, whether it's this slide or you've got links to anything, we're happy to post those on social, and then also send a follow-up email to anybody that RSVP'd, just to make sure that they get the information needed. But yeah, and you're right on time this morning too, so thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity, and we're here as a resource, and Nikki, definitely let me know how we can help you.
Yeah, I might be your next client.
Right on. Yeah, Francine, give us a call. We're hopefully releasing it this weekend.
Right. As a teacher, I've taught for Palm Beach County School District. I've taught middle school. I taught high school. This is an amazing session.
Thank you.
Even I, as a teacher, it's so hard to comprehend everything that's going on with these kids these days. And you're right, you can't get to them if they're stressed out. They tune you out completely.
Yeah.
And you can't tell them what to do. You have to guide them. But that assessment tool is key.
Yeah.
Because the kids at home, you don't know what you're dealing with. And having someone like you to go to is going to be very important. And just, I got an email from my child's teacher about the Palm Beach County School District's online learning guide. And I don't know what that is. I'm going to have to review it. But between that and what you've just told us and what's available from your company, I think it's definitely, very worthwhile to review.
Thank you. Well, we are very well positioned right now with the experiences we've had over the last, decade doing homeschooling and learning from the families who sought us out, whether they were looking for something non-traditional or they were just looking to, get out of an environment that wasn't serving. And so it's definitely an honor right now to be ready to help. And that's, our mission has always been to be making school less stressful for not just students, but parents and educators too. And I think that there's a lot of people reacting with fear and frustration, and we're really stoked to be able to be very proactive right now and have a more optimistic take on the moment. So hopefully
Right.
that
And I think the grades that you were talking about is so important because we're so hooked on everybody has to get a straight A's. Well, that doesn't mean that you understand it. That just meant that you could pass the test.
Right.
But did you actually learn it, and can you apply what you've learned?
Yeah.
And so having to deal with that and having to teach the students that it's okay to not know, that's the reason you're in school.
Yeah.
Is to learn.
Yeah.
So you can't learn everything at one time. There's a process for that. And I think trying to get them to understand that, especially middle school and especially high school when they're getting ready for college, it's very important.
100%. And my favorite story about this is the founder of Kinko's was a D student his whole life. He was dyslexic, and his parents said, "We don't care about your grades. We care that you're a good person and you know how to manage money." And when he was about the age of college students, he noticed, I think it was UC San Diego, needed a high-powered copy machine to have course packets made. He found a 100 square foot closet, rented a copy machine, threw it in there, and Kinko's was formed. They never had a single written contract. The company worked only on voicemail because he was dyslexic and didn't read and write. And his parents had exactly the right attitude. Doesn't matter what you get in school. It matters where you go in life and what resources you have and what resilience you have. So to be a kid who just accepted being a D student, knowing it wasn't going to define him, it created resilience and grit and put him in a position to be a problem solver in a different way. And as we look at, I, as an educator, would like to throw away all the academic standards and just focus on the 23 social emotional life skills that we foster: self-awareness, zest, resilience, grit, gratitude. These are the things kids really need to know. Then once they have that, you take their inspiration and guide them to learn more about what they're excited about. And that's what project-based learning is. I grew up in the gifted program, which in the 80s, that's where they put all the ADD kids. We all tested into the gifted program. So we got pulled out half day for creative, collaborative, project-based work. And in third grade, I was taught how to lead a think tank. And that's 100% the reason why I'm a CEO now, is the skills I got in that kind of a program. And that doesn't exist now. The gifted program has become how many AP classes can a student take? And that's the opposite. There's nothing creative about that process. That's just how many hours a night can you force yourself to study? And the, resourcefulness, resilience, creativity, those are the things that we're going to survive on and not just get hired and thrive on, but literally, as this world gets a little scarier and we have to come up with new ways to innovate, those will be the ways we do it.
Right. And I think the biggest thing too is book smart's not everything. Like you said, you got to learn your life skills is so much more important.
Yeah.
because you have to learn how to get through life.
Yeah.
And, you know, I didn't know I was dyslexic and needed glasses till I was a senior in high school. And imagine what kind of grades I could have gotten. But I still, National Honor Society, of course, but you know, I could have had even higher GPA, you know, and that assessment tool that you have is, I didn't realize what I was deficient in. I just spent more time to do what I needed to do to get whatever grade I wanted.
Right.
But it would have made life so much easier and so less frustrating.
Yeah, well, if we treat the symptom and not the label, it also is a different approach, right? Like when I was growing up, nobody was labeled anything. Nobody went to therapy or had tutors in the way we do now. And so, like you said, we just found ways to compensate because that's what you had to do. And so we've created a different way of looking at kids now because we have so much access to information. So I believe it's the way we apply the information. And our roadmap is designed to make it kid friendly. No kid should ever read their own psychoeducational report. Like that would be horrible. But why wouldn't we want a child to know how they learn? So
Exactly.
yeah.
Well, very good. A good discussion. And again, appreciate for everybody that's coming in. And I know Ed got answer to his question, just in case anybody else was wondering, is yes, this is being recorded. So you can actually find it in our playlist now on Facebook. And if for those that don't use Facebook, we are going to post this on YouTube in our playlist there. So we'll make sure that everybody that needs it or wants it will get it. And Allie, thank you so much again. And again, any information you want to send out to us, just please let us know. We'll make sure to get that to people. And again, everybody, thank you for joining us, and hopefully you guys have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.